I talk to clients about AI almost the same way I talk about any technology. First, what do you want to do? Like, what are your goals? And then once you determine what we're setting out to do, maybe AI is good to do it. But the red flag for me is if someone comes in and says we have to use AI because that's what's going on. Everyone else is doing it. Because there are a lot of cases where it doesn't really make sense. But for me, I'd say I use it day to day just because I think that is where coding is going. So kind of have to learn how to work with it. You definitely can improve your workflow, but it's also a little bit eye-opening to see that you still really do need a deep knowledge of the code base that you're working in.
Okay.
Because sometimes like one or two things are off, and if you can't find that, it may end up taking more time than if you had just written something yourself.
Hey, everybody, it's Roger with Kinsta. Today I'm joined with a new friend, Kevin. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Good. How are you, Roger?
I'm doing really well. It's the middle of the week. Things are cruising along, so I'm pretty happy with stuff. I'm excited to be on this call with you and learn more about you from looking at your website. You've got a huge variety of technologies that you're involved in. So, to get us started here, can you kind of tell us how you got into the web and big data and AI stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I've always been a programmer, more or less. I went to school for graphic design and computer science, did a little bit of work during college at an agency. And then I worked at a couple of agencies in the Boston area. They were very good, very great. I liked working there, but I found that like I like to jump around from role to role too much for an agency. And at first I thought, well, maybe this isn't good. Maybe I should just focus on development. But then I realized that's kind of what drives me almost, like the ability to jump from like design to dev to analytics. And that's where I sort of decided to go off on my own and pursue all of those things. So I'd say to answer like how I got into WordPress way, way back, I just was poking around with CMSs and I saw it and I was like hooked, basically. I could just
Okay.
see that it's very interesting to see how the themes are set up, to dissect them, things like that. And then with BigQuery and like data warehousing stuff, I got into that by way of originally working with Segment, which I believe, yeah, now they're owned by Twilio. But it was before the new GA had the event-based stuff. It was just an approach that made sense to me to be able to track a business event when this happens, another one when this happens, another one when this happens. So I set that up, connected it to BigQuery way, way back. I think it was like 2014, maybe 2013. And that was really valuable. And so that kind of steered me towards using analytics to help measure like how effective that design and dev work was. So I think that is that a good explanation? I think that
Yeah,
covered
no,
it.
no. So I want to go back and dig into things here a little bit. So you said you've always been a programmer. Did you go to college or school for any computer science or anything?
I did. I went to Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay, and you studied comp sci and got all into assembly code and everything?
Yeah, it was like a hybrid, almost self-created program where it was half graphic design and then it was half computer science.
Okay, very cool. Anything from that experience that you still kind of pull from today?
I mean, to be honest, maybe not at college, but one thing I learned then was like to really know how to do things well, you learn it on your own. I do a lot of reading. Any new topic, I'll dive in and try to understand it first before I work with it, which is sometimes hard because often you have to dive right into it. But yeah, learning to learn, I guess you would say, which is a little bit cheesy, but it's really ultimately what I came out with.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of times people go to higher education and they have like a direct goal in mind, and maybe sometimes they get disenchanted because it is really about learning how to learn. At least that was my
Totally.
experience as well. As you were starting to work with agencies, what kind of work were you on? Were these like enterprise level sites, small medium sized businesses?
I'd say medium, not too much enterprise right away, but medium to large businesses at some of them, at a few of them. There were some design sites that I did like from scratch with a brand that was like, I'd say smaller, more or less. And then my dev skills were a little bit stronger, so they ended up, that was where I was put. That's where I did well.
Excellent.
But yeah, at the time it was like Symphony apps. There was really no WordPress at the agency. It
Okay.
was like jQuery was new. Not to point out how old I am, I guess, but yeah, yeah, that
There's
was
a
the case.
giveaway.
Actually, the first agency job I had, I remember I went in and I was like, "You gotta check out this thing, jQuery." And I remember the developer there was like, "Oh no, I'm using Scriptaculous. It's way better." And anytime I mention that, people are like, "What's Scriptaculous?" Nobody knows what it is.
Exactly, exactly. All right, very cool. So then fast forwarding, it sounds like you've got some squirrel syndrome, which I suffer from as well. Like I like to go after the shiny new things and try all the things. As you started your own business, how did you start finding clients initially, and where did you have you niched down, as it were?
Yeah, too. I guess in terms of the like squirrely scenario too, it's more, I guess, that I find that if you want, like, let's say you're trying to increase leads on a site, you can do it with design, but it's only a piece of it. You can do it with analytics, but it's only a piece of it. If you know how to code, you can like look in and see like maybe people on an Android phone are having issues with this. It's sort of all like, dove into all of it to gear it towards like making those things better. And when you can do all of them, it's great, but it's all encompassed in that too. It's not necessarily, some of the things are not new. They're just, you know, in that space. But yeah, sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well,
Second
so
one?
then as you figured out that you wanted to go out on your own, what were some of the first
Yeah.
steps to get that really started and cemented?
So initially I did it outside of, I sort of pulled back my hours at agencies and worked a lot of night and weekend hours to build it up because it would be very hard to do a hard switch to it. But initially, a lot of it was SEO, so I was pretty good at it. Could rank pretty well locally for like things like Boston WordPress developer and other stuff like that. And then the real, probably the larger clients that have been great to work with and they're more long term, a lot of those came from that original agency work 10 years down the road. Like they just reach out and they're like, we worked together on this. I don't know if you remember, but if you're available. And that's probably the best source of work referrals, to be
Okay.
honest. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. When people have worked with you and have an idea of what you can do and how you operate, that's always a big bonus. Fast forward to today. I'd be remiss not to bring up AI. It's everybody's favorite subject.
Yeah.
I take it at this point you're well over the hurdle of should we be using AI? Where are you focusing your efforts and how do you talk to clients about AI?
I talk to clients about AI almost the same way I talk about any technology. First, what do you want to do? Like, what are your goals? And then once you determine what we're setting out to do, maybe AI is good to do it. But the red flag for me is if someone comes in and says we have to use AI because that's what's going on. Everyone else is doing it. Because there are a lot of cases where it doesn't really make sense. But for me, I'd say I use it day to day just because I think that is where coding is going. So kind of have to learn how to work with it. You definitely can improve your workflow, but it's also a little bit eye-opening to see that you still really do need a deep knowledge of the code base that you're working in,
Okay.
because sometimes like one or two things are off, and if you can't find that, it may end up taking more time than if you had just written something yourself.
That makes sense. Absolutely. I run into the same thing where I'll get it to write something and it just doesn't feel right. And I'm talking about text, not code even. And I'll just end up using it as like a blueprint instead of what I'm actually going to end up with.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. When it comes to like WordPress and AI, are you seeing any solutions yet that are either client facing or customer facing that you're implementing?
Yeah, there's one that I wrote about recently that's kind of interesting. I won't mention who because it'd be best to do that. But spam with Gravity forms is a big problem. Anyone who has a form on any WordPress site, it's rampant. It's almost impossible to block it. But because it's a low volume site, there's not too many submissions going into this contact form. We used OpenAI APIs to basically just say, hey, here's the message. Does it look like spam to you? Give it a score, 1 to 100. And then based on that, what we did initially was it just put the score at the top so the internal team could review it and see like, is this effective? So we found out it was really good. So now we replaced, what is it? Cloudflare Turnstile with this AI approach, and works well so far. I guess the thing is like, it works well until the AI bots figure out how to beat the AI spam filters. And then I guess you're in this big loop, right? Where they go back and forth. But for now, yeah, it does work pretty well.
Excellent,
Also, a
excellent.
lot of content creation too is pretty common.
Definitely. As you're implementing WordPress sites, I'd be remiss to not bring up and mention Kinsta for hosting. Is there anything specific about working with Kinsta that you really appreciate?
Yeah, definitely. First, I'll say I have no incentive to say this, right? But I really like Kinsta. I started using it way back. I don't know when it was founded. I could be wrong about this, but I think it was 2016 or 17
Okay, yeah.
for a site that's still online today. It's proto.life. And they don't publish articles anymore, but it was great, to be honest. At that time, a lot of people, it was WP Engine was the only default, and they're still both great. Kinsta's been since then very fast. Site hasn't really went down for the server in any way. And anytime there's an issue, it's easy to get a response from it. I would say the big thing I tell people, like it's actually what I recommend, to be totally honest, on like Reddit, if somebody's wondering about a host, it is who I recommend.
Excellent.
A lot of the feedback you get is, well, get a site for $5 or $10, right? Elsewhere. I always say this to everybody, the amount of time you will save by just spending an extra $200-300 a year is so astronomically higher than the amount of time it will take if you go with the cheaper option that it's just, for me, it's a no-brainer, to be honest. And that sounds very promotional, but it is not. It's totally 100% honest.
No, and I appreciate that you were not primed in any way. But I'm with you on that. The managed aspect of having somebody there who's watching the servers, and if there is an issue, resolving it, having backups that actually work, it's priceless. And then having support that can actually answer your questions and get things figured out for you. Kevin, I like to keep these short and sweet. This has been really an enlightening conversation. I appreciate your time. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to hire you, what are the best ways for them to reach out?
Yeah, definitely. So kevinleary.net is best place to go. You can submit the form there, and it doesn't have AI spam blocking yet, but it might soon. And also just hello@kevinleary.net is another email that you can reach out on.
Excellent. And as far as like ideal customers, who do you enjoy working with the most?
I would say my sweet spot. So you mentioned the niche before. I didn't really mention it, but to be honest, I inherit a lot of custom built agency sites. So maybe somebody pays a lot for a brand and they get the brand online, but then they want to maintain that and like grow leads, try to get more business coming through, try to make it more effective at achieving those goals. Probably my sweet spot, I think, because I can set up analytics, help with like the design of certain flows, develop it out, build it, see it grow, and then iterate on it.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, Kevin, I appreciate your time. I hope that at some point I can have you back and we can talk more about some SEO and some AI and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks again for reaching out too. It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, Kevin, we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Bye, Roger.